Welcome to the Disrupt Now podcast.
Episode 44.
Create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life because you become what you believe.
What makes people excited is progress. You don't have to be at the goal yet to feel alive again. You have to make progress.
Just do right. Right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul.
What matters most is finding your inner purpose.
Disrupt Now, a coaching program and a podcast designed by entrepreneur and visionary Natalie Viglione. In this podcast, we bring together disruptors and life game changers that will help empower you to disrupt status quo in order to progress you towards the ultimate vision you have of your life. We'll explore alternative topics with our guests whom are global healers, meditation gurus, transformational life teachers and coaches, women entrepreneurs that are fighting to make this world a better place, and people in general that are disrupting industries from education, fashion, technology, art, health, and much more. Please join us on this journey to move humanity to a much higher level of consciousness and create more mindful conversations.
Hi, welcome to the Disrupt Now podcast, and I have the amazing co-host Diane McDermott with me.
Hi, Natalie.
Hey, this is actually, so Diane brought up some really intriguing points around not only what episode we're on, but also another factor. So she and I met exactly 1 year ago today. What?
Does anything in either of our lives look the same as it did a year ago?
Not even a little bit. No.
Everything has changed.
Yeah. That's when you know flow and evolution is happening, right?
Yes.
Now, regardless of what that has been and what the trauma has looked like or not, whatever that story has been.
Life experience.
Lots of experience.
Yep.
But there's also another piece to this. And so yesterday was 8/8, and it's a very, very powerful day, a very fiery, creative energy. So I know we talked and been feeling that vibe for sure.
Fiery and fierce is in the air.
Yes. Yes. And it feels like that. And it's like, it's kind of sticking with, like it was right before, and it's kind of sticking with me. So I feel this like, I gotta get all, I have, it's finally coming out, I guess.
I have so very much to say. Yes. And I have all of these things that I want to talk about and express and communicate and create a conversation and all of the things.
Exactly. And so today we're going to focus on a very intriguing experience that Diane has navigated through.
Yes, intimately acquainted with a very traumatic experience.
A very traumatic experience, but it's about, and the word navigating is key here, navigating through, and that added word of beyond trauma.
Right.
Because that's really what it's about. We've said this, I don't know how many times now in different episodes, in regard to the fact that, so we can, kind of get stuck in an emotion around something that has transpired.
Right.
And choose to live in that place of whatever is within that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that can't happen sometimes, like again, right? I don't think, a healing journey is like this,
It's non-linear. There's no, it's forward and back, and there's a law of the universe where, expansion always without fail follows contraction.
Absolutely.
But you can't escape contraction sometimes, as uncomfortable and heavy as those can be.
Absolutely. And again, I think the beyond component is huge, because it's when you finally realize that in whatever capacity you literally, it's not like you're maybe through it, because it could be an ongoing, a longer term journey of healing.
Right.
And the trauma is going to always be with you, perhaps, in so many different ways, whatever that might mean. But the beyond part is when you realize, I think, that you've actually come onto that other side, and you're actually facing it, going, holy shit.
Yeah.
That happened. And it's like not as painful, because you're almost a little separated from it almost. So you can talk about it.
Right.
Without
reliving the moment
by
moment.
Right.
Aspect of it. Right. From a place of, it's a perspective thing for me. And it's been now over 5 months, which I'm like, I can't believe it's been that long. Like it doesn't feel like it's been that long. But so what I realized in my own life, and it happened when I told my ex-husband to move the fuck out of my house. And it happened when I said yes to publicly speaking about navigating through and beyond my divorce. And now it happened again with this experience. Is I find that once I'm far enough beyond to start writing about it,
right,
that's a clear sign to me that I have to start speaking up more and more and more and sharing these stories.
Right. Because you're now, that's actually one reason why, for example, when I hit this major health brick wall last year, I decided to start talking about it and publicly speaking about it. Not so long after, I kind of had to like hide under the bed for a while, the initial feeling, the retreat, but because it's just like you said, when you're ready to creatively express it in whatever format, you've actually begun a true healing component.
Yes.
The navigational component, the part of the journey that experience lended to life.
Or invited, or I like the word invited.
Invited, opened.
Yeah.
Possibilities. I mean, that's the other interesting thing is, and I remember talking to you not so long ago, and it was maybe like a few months ago, right? And we talked kind of the first time, connected after the experience, and I remember you actually stating, I think this is just another piece of my story.
And that's an important distinction, because it is simply a piece of my story. It does not define who I am. It is a part of my life experience that I can't deny. It happened.
Absolutely.
It happened to me. And
absolutely. And so this story, just to put this out there also, this story is a story that it's an experience that so many people are experiencing in one format or another. The trauma that is happening right now in this country,
it's horrifying.
It's horror, and I say this country specifically. However, this is a world problem. Okay, we're not isolated in this any longer. This is not just a United States problem. However, I was this morning, and it threw me for a loop. I was, watching news super early, and the Amnesty International Travel Advisory was put on the United States of America by this organization, talking about the fact that, depending on gender identity, race, country of origin, ethnic background, sexual orientation, people may be at higher risk of being targeted with some kind of violence. This specifically talks about gun violence. However,
there's a variety of different violent behaviors. It's not limited to firearms.
And it's not limited to one race. So, I also heard this morning that RT America, which I actually love, as in, it's a much more honest news source, unlike the CNNs and Foxes of the world, in my book, right? But they're talking about how quote unquote conspiracy theories are kind of lending to this problem, and I'm like, well, first of all, they're not conspiracy theories. There's data and science that proves otherwise. So it's actually just truth being revealed. So be careful, like RT, like what you're stating here. But I mean, I think that this is part of the story, and I think this is, to ask you some questions to kind of go to the place that you want to go to with this today, in whatever capacity that looks like. Fucking status quo is not working anymore, and
clearly
it's not working. And I don't know.
There are so many broken systems in our country in particular, but you know what? We just can't keep doing the same damn things we've always done and expecting to get a different result. That is the definition of insanity.
It is.
And when's it gonna stop? I mean, it's just everywhere you turn. And I look around and I'm like, I'm horrified that this is the world I currently live in.
I know.
And infuriated. Because this is unacceptable.
It is. Especially when so you've said so many amazing things that if at the moment I could have captured it, but I did. It's just like on camera, even, because I think the powerful statements that you've stated in by the way, when I personally on the other side found out that this I was not only was I initially triggered with just fucking bawling my eyes out, I literally was like, holy I couldn't even grasp and comprehend that. So just from this, looking this way, like at you even, oh my God, holy fucking shit. That's pretty much all I said, I think, for probably, I don't even know how long that was.
Likewise. That was pretty much my reaction. Like, what the hell just happened?
And so the interesting thing is, I remember something you said very specifically, that you didn't even really want to know the story about what was happening on the legalities around what happened. And again, we'll get to that more in the core of what that is, But that to me, that told me so many things, because that's literally you stepping away from it. Like, none of that really matters because I'm moving beyond this.
Right.
What a powerful, powerful place to be.
And it felt very powerful. It really did. It felt truly powerful, not from a power over standpoint. Like, I want you to, like, that right from the moment all of this happened was very intentionally, my outlook on it is, obviously I paths crossed with this individual, but that doesn't mean our paths must stay in any way tied to one another. And I really, whatever happens to this individual, I honestly don't care, because it doesn't impact me and my day-to-day life. And it doesn't have to. And I can choose to let him move on his journey, and I can choose to allow myself to move on my own journey. And there's freedom in that.
That is freedom.
Yeah.
It is freedom. So let's get to kind of the guts of, as again, and you share what you feel you can. Just know, if you don't want to go somewhere, it's all good. Okay. Obviously.
And I just want to make it very clear, because I think you know this, Natalie. I'm sitting here in my living room right now, and I really, truly don't feel ready to speak publicly about this. I don't feel fully ready to do that at this moment. However, I am fully willing to, because it's meaningful for me to do that. And
right, I hear you. There's a difference. There is
a difference, yes. And in so many areas of my life, I recognize I have had a tendency to hold myself back because I didn't feel ready or I didn't feel like it was the right time. You know what? I realized over these past years, I'm never going to feel 100% ready. And I'm not willing to continue sacrificing my experience of my life because I don't feel fully ready. So the details of this aspect of this part of my story are that on a Saturday afternoon in early March, in daylight, in a bank parking lot here in Charlotte, a man that I did not know, had never met, chose to brutally, physically assault me and attempt to take my car. I had parked in the parking lot and I was right by an ATM and there were other cars coming through. There were other people walking through the parking lot. So I really didn't see any or feel any indication where I should be on guard. However, this man happened to be walking through this parking lot. I had stepped out of my car and he walked past me and chose to come back. He didn't say a word to me. He just started punching me in the face. And as he continued to punch me, this happened in the span of seconds. Literally, my life changed in the span of seconds. This was going on for like 20 minutes. And he just kept hitting me. And then he wanted my keys and was trying to physically wrest them out of my hand. And my initial response was, fuck no. And then finally, I just dropped them. And it wasn't about my car, but he took my keys, got in my car. And then this is actually my favorite part of the story. So I drive a Honda Accord, and from the outside, it looks like, oh yeah, whatever. But it's actually kind of a badass car because it's a 6-speed manual transmission. Well, this man was not able to drive it. So the ultimate irony of that. So he ended up dropping my keys and running out of this parking lot.
I did not know this, so wow.
Yeah, it makes me laugh. 2 people had stopped to help, a lady and a man. Again, all people I had never met before, total strangers to me. They both stopped to help. The lady called 911. And by this point, this guy that attacked me is gone now. And then the police showed up. It was just chaos. And I'm standing in this parking lot, just blood is everywhere. And I'm just stunned. It was so completely surreal. In the matter of seconds, my life changed. And I'm like, I just wanted to get in my car and go home now. And I couldn't do that. And medic arrived and the lady's insisting that I lean against my car. And I'm like, why? I'm okay. And I'm not seeing, obviously, how I look. And the guy that stopped, he was looking for a towel. He ended up giving me the shirt off his back. And, I ended up with not only a broken nose, but my upper jaw was broken in 2 places, fractured down the middle. It was traumatic. And it changed everything. It led to 2 surgeries. I've never had surgery before. I ended up with, I have a permanent metal plate inside my skull, but I ended up with these metal bars on the inside of my mouth that for almost 8 weeks, every time I talked, ate, laughed, these metal spikes would like stab me. So it was incredibly painful and uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
And just on so many levels, it was, how is this happening to me? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was surreal. It still is surreal to feel like that was me.
It wasn't.
So that's in a nutshell of, and it was, I love this word juxtaposition, because even in that moment, before medic even arrived on the scene, the man who assaulted me, we're about the same age. I will not speak his name. He has joined my ex-husband as he who shall not be named.
Yes.
Because I'm just not going to give the energy to him.
Exactly. Right.
White guy, about my height, so 5'10", 5'11"-ish, about my age. The two strangers who stopped to help were both Black. And my awareness of that, and that there is so much good in the world, and there are people willing, because these individuals who stopped to help could have looked at this man and I and made the assumption that we were a couple.
Right.
And they didn't. They stopped to help and didn't assume. And that was really powerful for me to recognize, because there really are good people in the world. There are people that are willing to show up and be the helpers with no expectation. Like I will never probably know these individuals' names.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to actually express my appreciation for their behavior and their actions.
Right.
And it's been that way from medical people, surgeons. I've been in touch with the State Department of Public Safety, victim assistance, everyone across the board, their response to hearing this experience and this aspect of my story has across the board been so full of grace and concern and genuine care. It's been astounding to witness, and it's been, that aspect of it to me has been reassuring.
And even talking about it like you just did, it's like, was that a movie that you were watching?
Right.
That kind of, and we've said this many times, what the actual fuck?
Right.
Like how, So,
and, it's important for me to communicate this experience, because up until March 2nd of this year, I never would have even imagined that something like this could happen to me. And I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am an aunt, I am a niece, I am a friend,
right.
I am all of those things, and this did happen to me.
Right.
So violence is an aspect of the world that we live in. It does happen. Sometimes there's simply no explanation for it. There's no logic to it. And you can't explain it.
You can't. I think about, like, again, I think the healthiest, most amazing aspect about your approach to this was letting it go. For example, how much of you could have changed to be in this dark energy of wanting to get revenge, wanting to get him, ensure that he goes, to jail. The white angry man goes to jail forever. Think of how that to me is the most incredible part, to be super real, because it could have inherently ripped your soul. I just see you in such this light space around it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that was, again, intentional. And I am nothing if not intentional about everything in my life.
Right. Intention.
Right after it happened, I knew people around me were very angry. And I was like, okay, you do your anger. That's cool. I was never angry at this man.
Right.
Because I deeply know and understand hurt people hurt other people.
Absolutely.
You don't treat another human being the way that he treated me. Right. And by the way, I was not the only one that he did this to. There had been other people he assaulted the same day. But you don't treat another human being in this manner unless you are carrying around intense, deep amounts of pain and hurt. And he is on his journey. And I'm not, and part of this actually wakes up, that my temperament is actually pretty even-keeled, pretty moderate, whatever, easygoing. But just below the surface, there is absolutely a side of me that is very defiant and rebellious.
Yeah.
So this really illuminated for me, fuck this. I am not going to let any man impact my experience of my life.
Right.
And that really was part of what was underlying my intentional decision to just let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I this and the interesting piece to this is that when you are looking at trauma of any kind,
Right.
your choice to move in that direction changes the trajectory of your existence probably forevermore, because I don't think that, you know what I mean, I don't think there's once you go down a dark path of pure hatred and rage.
Yep.
Yeah, it well, what, okay, this and this is look, we can talk empathic here.
Oh God, yeah.
because he's a human.
Right.
You're a human, and no one should ever treat anyone that way. But what happened in his life to lead him to this path of awful, horrid, unbelievable, unimaginable things? I mean, that's the thing. Like, we can, and you can talk about murderers, I mean, normally there's so much trauma in their lives and pain that they've chosen to go down a dark path.
They hurt, and it's an attempt to alleviate the pain that they feel internally, is they externalize it.
Right.
And that's how they experience some level of root. So my psych background comes into play, of course, you know. And that for me is helpful to have that perspective of it. You know, even with the recent additional mass shootings in the country, it's like, you know, I remember back when Columbine, that shooting happened in '99, I was in college, and I think I had just found my path in psychology at that point. So it was an interesting time to be in the psychology community, because there were a lot of conversations about mental health and how did we miss the signs, because there are certain signs mental health wise that are kind of silent indicators that people may become violent and externalize the pain and the rage that they feel within themselves. So having that understanding for me was really helpful in getting to a place of, I mean, I could choose to not forgive you, but I could choose to be angry, but how's that going to benefit me? It's not.
It's not. It never does. And, you know, I've seen this happen before, and I know that you have, especially coming from a social work background. You know, you can see when people have chosen to embrace the anger and hatred and resentment and pain and trauma and darkness of whatever has happened in their lives.
Right.
And use it then as catalysts to be excuses for how they treat other people, what they do in their life, which at some point, I'm sorry, and we have to recognize and have empathy for them, but at the other end of the spectrum, if they're truly, if they're given the light, they're given education, if we can help to bring them into a place where they're not in pain, where they are provided with a loving environment, and that doesn't work,
right,
then that's their choice.
Right.
Then whatever happens to you, that's, you know, dude, that's on you, you know?
And forgiveness there's a difference between understanding that, like I said, hurt people hurt other people. There's a distinction between understanding that and accepting their behavior as acceptable, because I don't condone his actions. I don't endorse violence.
Right.
I just have an awareness and an understanding of what's beneath the surface when individuals make choices like that.
Exactly. And, you know, the power and strength that you hold around that is not only, it makes me, you're hope in humanity, you know, knowing that there's people like you and many others that where we can start to look at this and be like, you know what, we have to be angry. We have to not accept the status quo. We have to use that fire and passion to move beyond, but we have to rebuild, and to rebuild, and we just said this before we started this, you have to fucking burn it all down.
Burn it the fuck down. All of the broken systems. This is my personal belief. Our mental health system is broken.
Yep.
Prison system is broken. Our education system in this country is broken.
Absolutely.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
if something's not working, it's like with, marriage. If my marriage was not working for me, so.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
I could have stayed, and maybe there's some alternate universe where there's a version of me that did stay.
Right.
I mean, I'm glad I'm not experiencing that, but.
Right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. The intention.
Right.
Of where you choose to. Of where you choose to put energy.
Yes.
The word intention is, I'm sorry, but that just cannot get away from that word. It's like, it's so huge. And I think that, I was just looking at some of our notes. When you have such a broken system,
right,
what does that cause? That causes anger and hatred. Okay. Yeah. So cool. We understand that. But again, this is why we have to get away from this, this race, question about, who causes trauma, and
race or even gender. I think is
gender too. Yeah.
And you and I've talked about the importance of having these types of conversations actually with men as well. And I've had so many of those conversations in recent months myself. And so it's always interesting to get a man's perspective on this, because men and women just navigate the world differently. We just do. Yep. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. We just have different lenses that we see things through. And even in the emergency room, one of the first nurses that was assigned to me was a man. And he was a little bit older than me probably, and he was really sweet. And as his shift, I was there long enough for their shifts to change. He came over to me and was saying goodbye. I thought he was going to start crying. Like, he was apologizing. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, am I going to need to reach out and comfort you now? Because I don't know if I have that capacity at the moment. I'm a little stunned and so in shock.
I'm kind of dealing with some stuff right now.
Kind of got some personal stuff going on. But I looked at him and I remember saying to him, I said, I know without question that there are wonderful, amazing, intentional, and heartfelt men that are in the world. And I looked at him and I said, and thank you for caring for me tonight and for being one of those men. Because it was almost like he was apologizing for this guy that assaulted me. And I'm like, you had nothing to do with this. Like, you don't have to apologize for your entire gender. I'm not going to take a broad stroke and like write off all men, because that's not accurate at all.
Yeah.
So there's so many different layers to it that.
Right. And see, that's another place that you can go. And I've seen this too many times, and it's hard sometimes not to bulk things together and put a blanket statement out saying, men fucking suck. They've raped and killed women for thousands and thousands and thousands and you can really go there.
Yeah.
That's not an honest. That's again putting this. That's like coming at it with this like, with this anger that, yes, you can feel that for a moment, but the truth of the reality of this world is that there are horrifying, and I'm using that term in what a loose term. It's like, it's hard to say who is horrid and who's not, if that person is coming from a perspective of like, well, this is what I'm here to do. You can go real esoteric and like really think about it from that perspective. But there are wonderful people. There are wonderful people. I mean, look at the men that stepped up and helped you. And
oh my God, so many police officers. I mean,
exactly.
The genetics, like medical people, just like so many people. Yeah. I mean,
and it's men, and so we got to just get away from this. It's like
from the labeling and getting hung up on a label. It's like,
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm proud of the fact that I'm happily divorced. Like, however, divorce doesn't define me. Like, I mean, that's one category I can check, but
same here. Check that box off.
So many of us.
Yeah, that happened. Okay, checking that divorce. But again, another, you know, you can go into the whole thing of like, because my divorce was freaking horrifying, but I was a horrifying person. I didn't know who I was then.
Right, exactly.
What I was doing was like, not right. Like, you know, so I wasn't aligned with myself. He wasn't aligned with himself. It was just it was like oil and water, and we weren't ever gonna be able to do so. But I could have moved away from that angry and hate. And I've had people that are acquaintances in my life right now that literally don't even really want to be around men because they're so pissed off and angry that they, you know, about that situation that happened. And it's like, so what do you think is going to happen to your energy, and what do you think is going to happen the rest of your life if you stay in this place? Like, talk about no turnover, no evolution, no growing. There is no beyond for some people.
For some people, that's true. Yeah. And that is not my style. And people, you know, I would roll my eyes at some point. People are like, you're so brave, you're so strong. I'm like, what the fuck other choice did I have? Like, I'm not aware of another option.
But you know what, that's what makes you, like, that is something else. And see, that is the thing that is powerful. That it literally is owning a power, because there were other options. There really truly could have been if you were a different human, but you're not.
And healing is so interesting. So when this all went down in March, it really, you and I've talked about, I think, you can't have, or expansion always without fail follows contraction. You cannot separate those two experiences. So at one point in March, like, I had calendar appointments that were gone, and, you know, some people were just not talking to me, and I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And then I wondered, I'm like, well, I wonder what amazing things are going to come into my life later, because I've been contracted so far back. Like, I joke, I've been very productive from bed. I'm still very productive from bed. Now it's just a preference, not a necessity.
Yeah.
But I had to, you know, for about a month, I would reach a point, and often in the day, I would just really need to be in bed resting and working from there. Yeah. And that was hard for me, because I don't naturally sit still, and healing takes so much energy. And it's exhausting. And to really be pulled back and almost kind of like looking around like, all right, I guess I'm supposed to rest for a little while, but then wondering also at the same time, well, I wonder what expansion is coming. So
right, because, and you know, I think that this is something that's often misunderstood when it comes to, because I think really most of us are healing from the very get-go. We're healing from whatever it might be. It could be, you know, really bad experiences with our, you know, the family, the origin.
Yeah. Those issues got layered on top of everything else here. I'm like, I told you not to come visit me. And I was not happy with the decisions that were taken out of my hands. And I was really angry about that stuff, because my family childhood dynamics got then layered on top of surgery and trauma and pain, physical pain. And I was hiding in my bedroom for several days. I would not come out. I'm like, nope, I'm good. Let me know when everyone's gone.
Let me not like add this onto I mean, come on, like there's.
Well, and I wondered how much, at one point, I really did look around. I was sitting in the kitchen, I think, and I'm like, and exactly how much am I supposed to fucking hold right now? Like, it just felt like how much more weight can get piled on top of me before I collapse. Right.
And get to a space where you didn't want to go, where you didn't, you know, you knew that you didn't really have to go. See, that's the other thing. It's like, well, and I know that during this whole experience, you know, intentions of others that come from a loving place can also come from a place of not the specific energy that you want to drive into the experience, right?
And that was really frustrating. I'm such an independent person.
Yeah.
There was about a week where, I'm not really joking when I say I was on semi-house arrest. Like at one point, I didn't have the key to my car. Like I couldn't have left if I wanted to. And physically, there was nothing wrong with me. I could have driven physically. But I didn't have my freaking car key. And then like family were staying in my house. And it was just layer upon layer upon layer of all of this stuff. And it was just like, it was a lot. And I really, that made me angry, was feeling like my freedom was taken away against my wishes. Like I had spoken up and said what I wanted and what I didn't want. And people coming from a place of love, people around me were making decisions that were like, no, we're not doing it that way. And I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, this is my life. And I'm telling you what I do and don't want. You can't override me. And yet they did. And so there was a real intense frustration for me around even just that part of the experience. And
exactly, which see, and this is another area I think that we, that is a part of this too. It's also control.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Not even control. It's like my sovereignty was taken.
Right.
And it was diminished. And
which adds
stress.
Yeah, it just adds so much. Yeah, it does, which is the exact antithesis of what you need during that experience.
Right.
So, it's like so counter.
I don't feel like clenching my jaw. It's healing right now, like the day after surgery. My jaw is all clenched. Like,
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what the doctor was like. Don't do that. But yeah, it's so what are some of your biggest things to say to others that have or have just, or may have gone into a path that wasn't in this powerful space? What are some words that you'd like to say to them? Because I think, first of all, I also want to tell people that Diane looks beautiful. You'll see her on the video. We are recording this. So, she, there's like, looking at you today, there's no fucking way I would have ever understood that happened, right? Like, so that's right. So it's now just this scarring, like kind of like internally that exists, right? So
right. So I describe it as invisible scars.
Yeah.
And I know you can relate to that term and even that experience, because again, to look at you, you wouldn't guess what you have going on behind the scenes.
Right.
What you're navigating. And so, so many people in the world, we all have a story. We all have multiple stories and multiple traumatic experiences, whether that's physical trauma, grief, loss, major divorce. And to look at people, you can't really know truly what's going on in their life. And I feel like that's a really powerful invitation to practice more compassion with each other. Because from my perspective, I got to a point by like late April, early May, it really felt like I was coming back up for air. Like I was feeling a lot better. I was able to get back out and I never really stopped. I showed a house like 3 days after I had surgery. Like I never really stopped. That's what people don't understand. Which like 80% again of my work I could do from home, from bed, whatever.
Yeah.
But I never really stopped completely. I just was much more aware of taking care of myself.
Yeah.
By May, June,
right.
And putting myself first and resting when I needed to and felt tired. But it got to a point where to look at me going about my day and out and around the city, I had to consider how much do I share with people?
Right.
Of what happened?
Right.
And for me, it was a question of how much energy do I have to share that? Because for me, as someone who is so empathic, when I share the story with someone who's not heard it before, I can feel their reaction.
Yeah.
The energy drops, and that there's a drain on me to even witness someone's reaction. Even when 99.9% of the time people's reactions, I am so very sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. So I would go wherever I was, and I'd really think about, how much do I want to let this person know?
Exactly. Right. And you know, we've talked about this too, like the having to retell consistently, like while it's healing and it is an embracing component of it. It's not necessarily something you just want to like have to be putting out there all the goddamn time, because then it kind of also keeps you kind of like in it also. So right. So what do you think the most empowering, I think the beyond the trauma is really the key words here, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing that you've found, you know, through this process that has really provided more of a solid foundation underneath you right before we close out? Because I think that's what people are going to be seeking, and you know, that's like an initial response of like, well, what was it that kind of brought you into this solid place?
I don't know that there's a single answer to that question.
Yeah.
There was a book, the name of the book is escaping me, but there's a book by Emily McDowell and some other co-author. The title is something about there's no good card for something like this, like when shitty things happen to people you love, like, what do you say? And that's, I think, in my experience, what a lot of people struggle with. Well, I don't know what to say. Well, I mean, unless you're being an asshole, there's not really anything wrong you can say. Like, even I'm sorry is okay. And just don't stop reaching out to someone just because whatever they're navigating may make you feel a bit uncomfortable.
It's a very good point. Very good point.
You know, and this whole experience did shift relationships in my life.
Yeah.
Were very, very close to me are no longer.
Right.
And yet at the same time, other people that I either didn't know or didn't know as well or hadn't been connecting with as much recently flooded toward me. But trauma, grief, loss, major life transitions, they're going to impact pretty much every area of your life.
Absolutely.
And that's okay, because they really, change is scary. I jump into change apparently a lot more often lately than ever before, but it's not my natural style to like seek it out. But even sometimes when it's truly terrifying in the moment, there is light and joy and appreciation that lie both within and beyond.
Right.
Traumatic experience.
Right.
Should we choose to recognize those gifts?
And
I don't recommend experiencing a broken up jaw. Like, I hope that no one has to navigate that particular pathway, and the details are different for each of us.
Yeah.
None of us escapes this life without encountering some form of grief and trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think you nailed it. You know, when you shift, when so many things shift around you,
right?
It's just making sure the foundational component of that is that whatever's being shifted is shifting you towards an evolution. It is shifting a higher vibration of, if you choose that. So, Diane, thank you, for sharing. I'm being willing to share this story. And by the way, just to put it on record, I did not force Diane to do this.
I volunteered. I volunteered myself.
No strong arming here, okay?
But it was a given that we were going to have this conversation. And you are really good about giving me the space until I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I really very much appreciate that about you and our relationship, because it's meaningful. And, you know, we were together about a week ago, and it's not like we'd never talked about having this conversation before, but when you asked me last Friday and I looked at you, I was like, well, I am writing about it. So I think we maybe need to go ahead and just do it. So yes, this was not strong arm. This was voluntary.
But yeah, you know, just there's such a strong basis of why this story is so powerful, though, you know,
and
relevant to oh my God. And you're a light and you're loved, and I just, you know, need to share that. So you know, in the community that's going to be listening to this, you know, if you want advice now, you know, that is the other part of this is now there's, you know, a connection in a different way, that, you know, Diane can connect and say, and through your writings and stuff, which is part of this whole partnership here too, that, you know, right. Those written components added to this, people understanding and hearing this experience can connect on a much deeper level, and there's a lot of advice and wisdom that you can provide, which that's again what this is all about. How do we support people in their transformational journeys, especially when they get roadblocked in some major trauma? Because it's fucking gotta happen. Like,
I mean, what happened to me could happen to any one of us, and but I'm not willing to hide away and sacrifice joy and life experience, and that's not me, and I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to keep showing up,
exactly. So thank you, Diane, and everyone listening. Again, we'll be posting, you know, written components around this on the Disrupt Now blog. So again, so much love to you, Diane. So much love to the Disrupt Now community, and thank you.
Thank you. Love you, Natalie.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and please, in the meantime, if you know anyone or you want to pitch your story, please get in touch with us at disruptnowprogram.com, or you can get in touch with me on Instagram at disruptwithnatalie. Of course, all of the information is on our website. Again, thank you, and in the meantime, remember, no status quo.